Hello and welcome to my channel. I am your host Dr. Harshit Sinha, continuing the ESG series in context to India taking the word environment in ESG. It refers to how a company performs as a steward of the natural environment. It includes company's strategy for conserving natural resources, managing environmental risks, and the effects of their operation on the environment. One can also say that the environmental stewardship is where ESG insights become action owing to the prevailing laws of the country. Thus, it involves direct engagement between the investors and the companies they invest in, aiming to drive positive environmental changes and safeguards the long-term value of these companies. In the ESG framework for India, environment refers to the consideration of environmental factors when assessing the sustainability and ethical practice of a company or organization. It involves evaluating how organizations are managing their impact on the natural environment, including aspects such as the climatic change, pollution, resource consumption, and biodiversity conservation. Within the Indian context, considering the environment in ESG is important due to country's significant environment challenges. India faces issues such as air and water pollution, deforestation, depletion of natural resources, and the impact of the climatic change. Therefore, assessing and monitoring how companies in India addresses these challenges is vital in assessing their overall sustainability and ethical practice. In terms of ESG reporting, companies in India are encouraged to disclose information about their environmental performance such as greenhouse gas emission, waste management practice, and environmental. This information helps investors, stakeholders, and regulators to understand a company's environmental impact and its commitment to sustainable practice. Overall, within the ESG framework, environment refers to the consideration of environmental factors and the management of the company's impact on the natural environment to assess their sustainability and ethical practice. Before we proceed further for the environmental under ESG, let us know what India's stance to the United Nations climate change parties traced during the Paris Agreement in 2015. The primary objective of the UN Paris Agreement is to limit global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius with a preference for achieving a temperature rise of 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to the pre-industrialist level. The agreement recognizes the urgent need to address climatic change and its potentially catastrophic impact. ESG disclosure has gained significant importance with a focus on analyzing specific risks and opportunities rather than high level. This shift in perspective highlights the need for the companies to provide detailed information on material ESG factors. The Task Force on the Climatic-Related Financial Disclosure has played a crucial role in shaping market and policy expectations for transparency. Their recommendations and the guidance have led to a paradigm shift in disclosure practice. This includes setting supervisory expectations, engaging with the industries to develop best practices, refreshing the TCFD guidelines within the regulatory. India, as a part of its commitment under COP21 Paris Agreement, has pledged to reduce greenhouse gas emission produced for every dollar of the economic activity by nearly half by the end of this decade. Additionally, India aims to achieve 40% of its electric power installed capacity from non-fossil source by 2030 with a target of installing of 175 gigawatt for renewable energy by 2022. Furthermore, India seeks to reduce the emission intensity of its entire country economic by 45%, encompassing all green gas not limited to CO2. This pledge and goals demonstrate India's dedication to addressing the climatic change, transitioning towards the renewable energy, and reducing its overall environmental impact. This slide explains the Indian context to COP26 Glasgow Climatic Pact in 2021. The summit primarily focused on the intersection of the climatic action and sustainable development goal. Its overarching objective was to achieve global net zero emission by the middle of the century while striving to limit the increase of global temperature to a maximum of 1.5 degrees Celsius. Key outcomes from COP26 includes a commitment to provide financial support for the climate adaptation efforts in developing countries. Additionally, there was a significant milestone in finalizing the Paris Agreement rulebook, which established transparency and reporting mechanism. This rule book holds countries accountable for fulfilling their climate action commitments and self-defined targets outlined in their nationally determined contribution. Another crucial aspect addressed at the COP26 was the development of the market mechanism and non-market approaches, particularly outlined in Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. These mechanisms aim to facilitate the transfer of emission reduction between the countries and incentives private sector's investment in climatic-friendly solutions. Additionally, countries explored non-market approaches to enhance cooperation on mitigation and adaptation efforts. India's commitment under COP21 Paris Agreement, the nations pledged to achieve net zero carbon emission by 2070. India also announced ambitious targets for expanding renewable energy infrastructure and reducing carbon emission as a part of its efforts to combat climate change and contribute to the global climate agenda. At COP27, India outlined its strategy for balancing development needs with climatic action. The focus is on just transition from fossil fuel to clean energy through the optimal use of natural resources and ensuring energy security. Major goals include rapidly expanding renewable, especially solar and wind energy, launching the National Hydrogen Mission to scale up the green hydrogen production, and threefold increase in the nuclear power by 2032. In the transport sector, increased use of biofuel like ethanol blending in petrol, greater electric vehicle penetration and adoption of green hydrogen fuel will drive low carbon transition. India aims to maximize the use of electric vehicle 20% ethanol blending by 2025 and enable a model shift towards public transport for passengers and freights. For sustainable and climatic resilient urban development initiatives like smart city, integrated planning for climate adaptation and energy efficiency, effective green building codes, and improved solid and liquid waste management will be pivotal. Industrial growth will continue while prioritizing energy efficiency via perform, achieve, and trade scheme, electrification and processes, material efficiency, recycling, and exploring options for hard-to-abate sectors like steel, cement, and aluminium. India has increased forest and tree cover alongside of economic growth in the last 3 decades. Low forest fire incidents and substantial carbon sequestration by forest and makes it on track to meet its enhanced NDC target in the area. The overall transition to low carbon pathway requires significant financing for developing countries like India. While costs are estimated in trillions of dollars, climate finance from developed nations falls short. India reiterated that developed countries must provide substantial grant and concessional loan for mitigation, adaptation, and just transition in the developing countries as per the UNFCCC. And historically, climate justice and equitable climate action remains India's key priority. India has increased forest and tree cover along with economic growth in the last 3 decades. Its low forest fire incidents and substantial sequestration by forest and trees make its own track enhanced NDC target in this area. However, the overall transition to the low carbon pathway required significant financing for developing countries like India. While cost of estimated in trillions of dollars, climate finance from developed nations falls short. The developed countries must provide substantial grants and concessional loan for mitigation, adaptation, and just transition in the developing countries as per the UNFCCC and historically responsibility. Climate justice and equitable climate action remains India's key priority. Now looking Indian context to COP28 in Dubai 2023, India has been at the forefront of supporting action-oriented steps at the global level in response of the climatic change. We have always held in the view that the people and the planet are inseparable and that human well-being and the nature are intrinsically. India is concerned of the global south and reiterated the urgency of making the means of implementation, particularly climate finance, available to the developing countries to achieve their climate ambitions and implement their SDGs. India's demand the operationalize of loss and damage funds and establishment of the UAE Climatic Investment Fund at the COP28 and called for a COP28 to deliver the following issues related to climate finance. India engagement at the COP28 led by the Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi showcase a comprehensive and proactive approach to tackling the climate change, emphasizing the urgency of accessible climate finance through multilateral development bank for developing nations. India highlighted the need to implement national determined contribution and voiced concern on the behalf of the global south. The initiative launch including LED IT2 for the industry transition, the green credit program, incentives pro-environment action, and the focus on the Himalayan region vulnerability demonstrate the India's commitment to diversify strategies for sustainable development, mountain communities green and resilient with the help of National Mission for Sustaining the Himalayan Ecosystem launched as a part of the National Action Plan on the Climate Change in India. Furthermore, India's involvement in the Quad Climatic Working Group and the Mangrove illustrate a recognition of the pivot role played by local communities and the regional government in fostering the sustainable lifestyle and holistic conservation efforts. National statement for India's emphasis India's comprehensive approach to environmental conservation, addressing not only the emission but also land degradation, ecosystem restoration, and biodiversity enrichment. The commitment to lending to micro, small, and medium enterprises (MSME) in the renewable energy sector, as highlighted by the IRDA, underscore India's focus on driving economic and environmental sustainability. Overall, India's active participation and the COP28 position the country as a proactive and influential player in the global fight against the climate change, causing a commitment to collaborate, innovate, and localize the. Looking at the definition aspect, environmental criteria in ESG evaluate how companies act as stewards of nature through their business operation. Their principal focus on the natural resources conservation, environmental risk management, and sustainable practice. It takes into account companies' utilization of natural resources and the effect of its operation on the environment, both direct operation and across its supply chain. The environmental criteria consider how a company safeguards the environment, including corporate policies addressing the climate change. It's a measure of a company's impact on the environment and its effectiveness in managing environmental risks, part of assessing the company's overall sustainability and ethical impact. The environmental factors include direct and indirect greenhouse gas emission, management stewardship, overall natural resources, and the firm overall resilience against the physical climate risk like climate change, flooding, and fires. This can also encompass things like carbon emissions, energy consumption, waste management, and water usage. India's national guidelines on responsible business conduct outline relevant principles. Principle 2 emphasizes providing safe, sustainable goods and services. Principle 6 focuses on respecting and protecting the, while Principle 9 highlights engaging consumer responsible without overexploitation. These three principles have been discussed in detail in my previous presentation. Today it appears that primarily environmental factors are those that will, based on the company's process of production, that will in some or another way affect external parameters like air, water, land, noise, hazardous item, etc. in the environment. This slide discusses the word environment in ESG. Today, environment stewardship is a growing priority for Indian industry, driven by the climate change, scarcity, and community expectations. Moreover, the key environmental factors assess the external impacts of companies' production process on the natural environment. This includes strategies for energy efficiency, reducing carbon emission, and adopting renewable energy, curbing pollution, waste management, water conservation, biodiversity protection, and investing in the green technologies across the value chain of any production activity. Taking account of any type of production entity, it explores the environmental impact at commercial entity as well as in the surrounding resident community from the manufacturing entity. Referring Sustainable Development Goal 13 and 15, which are directly linked with the world environment of the ESG framework, while the other SDG goal 6, 7, 11, 12, 14 and 17 are some or the other way become a subset of the former two while the execution of any production activities. Thus, a strong environmental performance requires companies to align business operation with the ecological sustainability. It demonstrates commitment through concrete goals on the carbon neutrality, resources efficiency, renewable energy use, recycle, habitat preservation, and environmentally safe goods or services. Proactively mitigating environmental risk and transparency through disclosure build stakeholder trust. A collaborative approach between the companies, regulators, and the consumer can escalate India's transition to an inclusive green economy with a green environment. Addressing these issues is essential to the long-term financial stability of a company. Investors identify opportunities in eco-friendly activities which can lead to competitive advantage in eco-friendly goods and services. Well, this slide shows different types of law associated to the environment in India. India's environmental laws tapestry woven of international inspiration and domestic action. In 1972, UN Conference on the Human Environment in Stockholm served as a pivotal movement highlighting the global interconnected environmental issues and human well-being. This sparked a call for balanced development that prioritized both economic progress and environmental protection. In response, India's constitution adopted environmental protection as a key principle. Article 48 mandates environmental improvement, while Article 51AG empowers citizens to protect nature. Furthermore, Parliament can enact law based on international agreement, and both central and the state government have legislative authority on the environmental matters. These constitutional principles translate into concrete action through a series of key laws. Life Protection Act safeguards animal and plant life, while the Water and Air Act's pollution control standards. The Environmental Protection Act bridge legal gaps and identify ecological sensitive areas. Scheduled tribes and other traditional forest dwellers act recognize the right and livelihood of indigenous community, emphasizing the social dimension of environmental protection. This legal framework reflects India's recognition that environmental challenges are multifaceted and requires multi-pronged solutions. Balancing economic development with the environmental protection remains a key theme, demanding ongoing efforts to improve enforcement, update regulations, and addresses the emerging environmental concern. By weaving together international principles, domestic legislation, and institutional structure, India's environmental law offers a roadmap for a sustainable future. Continued vigilance and adaptation will be crucial in ensuring that this roadmap leads to a clear, greener India for generations to come. Well, it becomes more complex when we look industry-based applicable law. Further, industry-based applicable law helps strengthen environmental governance, and the National Green Tribunal provides a fast-track platform for resolving environmental disputes. The Biological Diversity Act tackles piracy and regulates the use of biological resources, highlighting India's commitment to biodiversity conservation. Numerous provisions with the Indian Penal Code and the Code of Criminal Procedure penalize public nuisance and empower magistrates to prevent environmental harm. Civil law principles related to the nuisance also facilitate actions against violation. The Compensatory Afforestation Funds Act of 2016, afforestation requirements, and the fund management. India's Supreme Court has played a pioneering role in shaping environmental jurisprudence. It has led that the right to life Article 21 includes the right to wholesome environment through landmark judgment. Judicially endorsed principles such as polluter pays, precautionary principle, and public trust doctrine have instrumental in environmental protection. Procedural innovation, including the epistolary jurisdiction and continuing mandamus, enable the court to address environmental threats effectively. These laws are categorized based on the type of nature of industries, aiming to measure their impact on both physical and human parameters using baseline data. Consequently, India boasts a robust constitutional and legal framework supported by progressive judicial trends that prioritize environmental conservation. However, challenges persist in terms of implementation and enforcement, primarily due to insufficient capacities, limited community participation, and power imbalance. Nonetheless, the extensive regulatory framework and engaged judiciary provide a solid foundation for addressing India's environmental challenges. Now let us see comparison of ISO standards with the Indian Acts and Rules and Environment. Environmental concerns have become increasingly important in today's world, promoting the development of various frameworks and regulations to ensure responsible and sustainable practice. The Indian Acts and Rules and the International Organization of Standardization, that is ISO, are two prominent frameworks that addresses environmental issues. The narration aims to compare these two approaches, highlighting their similarity, differences, and overall effectiveness with the advent of ESG framework. It is noteworthy to compare the ISO with the existing Acts rules related to environment in India, because the former is voluntary while the latter gives much impetus to the mandatory national and the state government laws specific to environmental issues and pollution target. The main agenda of this slide is to share whatever is visualized as voluntary, which the country has taken seriously in its execution process. Thus today India competes with the rest of the world in maintaining the quality as well as ideology of the subject environment, and by large equally embedded easily with the ESG framework. The major strength of ISO is concerned with the adaptability to diversified industries, facilitating international trade and collaboration, regularly updated to reflect the advancements, provides business with the roadmap for environmental improvement. The major strength of ISO is concerned with the adaptability of diversified industries, facilitating international trade and collaboration, regularly updating to reflect advancement, provide business with a roadmap for environmental improvement. Our country's acts and rules are largely based on the principles near to the ISO that ensure comprehensive protection along with the business operation in diversified industries, equally recognize the rights of indigenous community and promote participation much ahead in the philosophy of the equity of benefits among the concerned stakeholders. Or one can say that the ISO is traditionally limited, increasing through stakeholders forum and partnership, while the later varied with the regulations mandating the community involvement. The major limitation observed with the ISO is that no guarantee of compliance and potential greenwashing may not directly address a specific environmental issue. Traditional lack of stakeholders' involvement and largely rely on the self-assessment and certification by independent bodies, limited or voluntary mechanisms like audits and reports. On the other hand, the formation of acts and rules relates to complexity, bureaucracy, and enforcement challenges, and its implementation involves cumbersome and time-consuming to navigate and limited monitoring capacity, resources, constraints for enforcement, potential disconnect between specific regulations and broader environmental goals that are enrooted largely with the government or accrediting agency, pollution control board, and designated courts enforcing penalty, fines, and corrective action order. Lastly, one can say that the potential of synergy that integrate ISO standards into relevant Indian regulation for practical tools and a stronger scientific basis. Besides, capacity to understand and implement both frameworks promote stakeholder engagement in standard development and regulatory decision making. Both ISO standards and the Indian Acts and Rules serve crucial role in environmental protection. ISO standard provides a global benchmark for best practices, while the Indian Acts and Rules serve as a legal framework with the enforceability. While ISO standards facilitate the voluntary adoption on a global scale, the Indian legal framework promotes mandatory compliance within the country. An effective environmental management system should combine the strength of both these approaches to ensure comprehensive and sustainable environmental practice. Collaboration between ISO standards and the country-specific law can further strengthen global environmental protection efforts under the ESG framework. This slide is a bit descriptive because it involves the initiative to climatic change in context to ESG by India. After the Paris Agreement 2015, India has progressed a lot to strengthen its efforts for global environmental protection under the ESG framework. Though the progress is at slow pace, remarkable and concreted efforts that lead to many affirmative action in this regard, highlighting India's significant role and contribution towards climate action. At the international level, India's contribution to climate action has been significant through its international efforts such as International Solar Alliance, Coalition of Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, creation of LED-IT, Infrastructure of Resilient and Island States, CAT Alliance. The Global Biofuel Alliance, launched when the G20 leaders met in Delhi earlier in this year, seeks to serve as a catalytic platform fostering global collaboration for advancement and widespread adoption of biofuels. Here produces a list of concrete efforts made by India which equals to that international standard and free in doing international trade around the world. India, the world's second most populous country, faces major environmental challenges stemming from its rapid economic growth and industrialization. Protecting the environment is a key priority of India. Initiatives like the National Solar Mission aim to rapidly increasing renewable energy capacity to 175 gigawatts by 2022 and ensure clean energy security. The National Mission for Enhanced Energy Efficiency targets annual saving of 10% of energy consumption by upgrading technology across sectors. Rigorous emission standards for vehicles have been implemented to control air pollution in cities. The LED Ujala scheme has distributed over 300 million LED bulbs, leading to 35 million tons of CO2 reduction annually. On the environmental front, India enacted the Biological Diversity Act to protect its ecological resources. However, industrialization and lack of strict enforcement have led to the continued loss of forest and wildlife. Air pollution from vehicle, industries and biomass burning in a massive health, with Indian cities ranking among the most populated globally. India is the third largest emitter of greenhouse gas after China and USA. Recognizing this, India has taken many positive policy action on the climatic change, curbing emission and promoting sustainability. The National Action Plan on Climate Change, launched in 2008, outlined measures for climate mitigation and adaptation across 8 core sectors. The plan promotes greener development and envisages creation of new funding mechanisms to support such efforts. The National Mission for Sustainable Habitat promotes energy efficient building and waste management in cities. The National Water Mission focuses on the water conservation, rainwater harvesting and equitable distribution. The National Mission for a Green India aims to increase forest cover by 5 million hectares, critical for climate regulation. The National Mission for Sustaining the Himalayan Ecosystem protects the fragile Himalayan ecosystem essential for water security in India. Expanding renewable energy capacity is a key priority. India aims to achieve 175 gigawatts of installed renewable energy capacity by 2023 under its National Solar Mission. It has made rapid progress with the current renewable energy capacity over 150 gigawatts. India has also set a goal of increasing energy efficiency by 20 to 25% under the National Mission for Enhanced Energy Efficiency. Cleaning up India's populated urban areas is another focus. The National Mission on Sustainable Habitat promotes sustainability in cities through improvement in energy efficiency, urban planning, transportation and the waste management. Many Indian cities are switching their public transport fleets to cleaner natural gas and electric vehicles. Ahmedabad launched India's first municipal green bond in 2018 to finance sustainable infrastructure. Recognizing the importance of forests, India launches the National Mission of Green India to increase forest tree cover by 5 million hectares and improve the quality of forests. The National Mission on Strategic Knowledge of Climatic Change promotes research on the impact and adaptation to climate change. Project Tiger and the Project Elephant conserve flagship species and their habitats. India has nearly attained the goal of bringing a third of its area under the forest and tree cover. Compensatory afforestation is mandated for the diversion of the forest land to minimize the ecological loss. However, more needs to be done to reservation degradation from pressure like development projects, overgrazing and encroachments. Waste management and curbing pollution are also gaining more attention. Many cities are modernizing waste collection system and building waste to energy plants. Delhi is India's most polluted city, is deploying smoke towers and procuring electric bus to cut the pollution, but still it is not sufficient. The National Clean Air program seeks to reduce particulate pollution in over 100 cities by 20 to 30% over 2017 levels by 2024-25. Plastic waste management rules curb single-use plastic. The Swachh Bharat mission has built over 110 million toilets to end open defecation and is supporting waste management program across India. India banned single-use plastic in 2022. More broadly, the Indian industry is also awakening to the importance of environment, sustainability and governance due to the growing global focus on ESG investing and disclosure. Top Indian companies are now reporting on their ESG policy, carbon footprint and sustainability targets more transparently. Reliance, India's largest company, recently unveiled ambitious net carbon zero target for 2035. More firms are also linking executive pay to ESG goals. While India still faces huge environmental and sustainable challenge, the policymaker and initiative launched in a recent year demonstrate India's commitment to tackle climate change comprehensively. National Action Plan on Climate Change and specific mission for solar energy efficiency, forests and sustainability put India on the right path. But stronger implementation of ESG policy, public-private partnerships and civil society participation will be the key to translating these goals into effective action on the ground. With its growing economic and large populations, India's ability to balance development needs with the environmental sustainability will be the important goal story in the 21st century under ESG framework. Now we will focus what does the environment management contains in context to the ESG framework. That is, the environment elements should be included in ESG framework. The ESG framework in India refers to set of guidelines and principles that companies and organizations can adopt to measure and assess their environmental, social and governance practice. ESG considerations have gained significantly importance in recent years as investors and stakeholders increasingly focuses on sustainability and responsible business practices. Ministry of Forest and Environment and Climatic Change of India has had a very exhaustive structural scope covering all aspects of environment protection and promotion. Taking account of these, the question arises as to what should be included as per the ESG framework of our country. ambit includes key element of environmental stewardship with aligned with the ESG framework covering all of the 11 topics highlighted in the slides. This pillar focuses on the company's impact on the environment. It involves assessing environmental risk, identifying opportunities for conservation and resource management, mitigating pollution and promoting sustainable. Companies are encouraged to disclose their greenhouse gas, water usage, waste management strategy, and initiatives to address climate change. However, looking at the adoption of the principles like adopting a life cycle approach, continuous improvement, stakeholders engagement, monitoring requirements covering habitat and wildlife conservation, afforestation, biopiracy, extended producer responsibility, etc. It was decided that ESG framework for the environment must revolve around 11 major elements as displayed in the slide and will be covered in detail in the later part of the. Well, owing to my content of the previous slide's presentation, and appropriate parameters of environment versus type of metrics have been laid down to make you understand. And I will request you all that before concluding that I encourage viewers to complete the metrics with the 11 environmental parameters that are in subject purview of ESG framework. This understanding will facilitate the next presentation, issues related to climatic change, a challenge for corporate ESG in India. So don't forget to subscribe my channel. and stay tuned for the next week for this interesting topic. Till then, bye bye.